Equal pay has been a hot-button issue for over 50 years now, first being acknowledged by the Equal Pay Act of 1963. Despite this piece of legislation, women still make less on average compared to men. So, what is the gender pay gap? It is important to acknowledge that the left and right have a very different view on what the wage gap means. Some people even go as far to say that it does not exist, but it is a fact that the wage gap does exist. It is, however, important to note the distinction between the unadjusted wage gap, which looks directly at the average earnings of all women when compared to those of men, and the adjusted wage gap, which controls for a number of variables. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, women earn 82 cents for every dollar a man makes. This video will be focusing on the unadjusted wage gap and how it can be solved. What makes a credible source? The advent of the internet has brought the world's knowledge to our fingertips, but sifting through what is accurate and what isn't can be a difficult task. What's more important than just finding a source that sounds good is confirming that the information is valid. Who wrote it? Is this an opinion piece or a scholarly journal? If it is an opinion piece or a second-hand source, what are the political leanings of the publishing website? Most websites have an About section you can check, and a quick Google search can give you a good idea of any political leanings. Finding a primary source like a scholarly journal or a research study is preferred as it displays the information in the clearest way possible. Anyone retelling the information in an article may try to skew the information to mislead the reader. When was the source published? Always make sure the sources you are citing are recent. A good rule of thumb is no more than 5 years, although it does depend on what you're researching. Relevance and parameters of the study. Make sure the study or article you are reading pertains to the topic you are researching. It could be helpful to write down a few key points about your topic and only look at sources that relate to this. Biases. One form of bias that both sides use is cherry-pick statistics. Cherry-picking is using single examples that do not reflect the reality of the situation to support your argument. One example of this is when people select specific occupations where women out-earn men as evidence that the wage gap doesn't exist, while ignoring the fact that men make more money in most fields. Dissecting a source. Let's take a look at an article written by InfoWars. InfoWars is known to be a far-right media outlet with a heavy conservative bias. Most of the articles found on their website are opinion pieces. In this article about the gender pay gap, the author mischaracterized a Harvard working paper and intentionally uses out-of-date statistics from the NBER, choosing to use a paper written in 2005 rather than the updated version from 2016. The article puts a large focus on the choices women make, and it makes it sound like there is no solution to the pay gap. But in the abstract of the Harvard paper they cite, the authors provide examples of targeted policy that could help shrink the pay gap. The author of the article also cherry-picks a few fields where women do out-earn men, but those are very limited. Men do tend to earn more than women in most fields. Where to look for sources. As students, we've all been told to never cite Wikipedia as a source because anybody can edit the web page. While it is true that anybody can edit these pages, they are heavily monitored and most of the information is up to date. It can be useful to read through a Wikipedia page to get a general idea of the topic, and then click on the hyperlinks or scroll down to the bottom of the page to check the sources. Make sure to read through the actual study to make sure the information is being accurately portrayed in the same way you would for any news article. Speaking of news articles, these are another great way to begin researching. But keep in mind that anything reporters say may be biased, so it is a good idea to check the sources they are citing. The best place to look for your sources is your school's library database. All of the information you find in the library database has already been vetted by someone, but it is still a good idea to do your due diligence and verify the accuracy or recency. Solving the pay gap. There are many obstacles to fixing the gender pay gap. The Harvard study referenced earlier states a few policies that would increase workplace flexibility and would help shrink the pay gap. Another thing that should be discussed is that women tend to gravitate towards lower-paying jobs. This is mostly societal. Boys and girls have different expectations set upon them as soon as they are born. Toys and media are marked differently, and as a result, our interests differ as we age. One thing that cannot be understated is the impact positive role models have on our future career choices. One example of this is the Scully effect, where the impact that Dr. Scully from the X-Files had on women in STEM was tracked. Encouraging women to pursue higher-paying jobs and promoting positive role models would help shrink the pay gap.